Not quite sure what happened there, but we took a pause and kept the music rolling, and we're good to go. Excited to talk about some NBA stuff. Obviously, we're going to get into the hate that has been coming LeBron James's way from the past few things that have happened the past week or two. We want to get into Giannis talking about his Oreo situation, and then the more serious NBA stuff.
Is it a
Ja Morant.
situation?
It is, because there's a little, one of his comments had me a little confused. So
Okay.
I'll bring it up. But Ja Morant getting injured, we got to talk about that. And then on the flip side, Zion potentially making a return soon, or at least looking like a positive turn in his recovery, as they make an announcement the other day. So we'll get into all of that. But first, yes, the more important NBA news. Giannis and his dunking of the Oreos that he talks about. One, he does it every single night, and I'm like, bro, you got to change up you got to change your snacks, or you're gonna start getting worn out. Secondly, you can't just throw the whole Oreo in the milk. Like, you can't. That's not a dunk. That's tossing it in the milk. Like, you're not dunking it in the milk. So that's where my beef comes in. But it is hilarious that he has made it to the age he is now and didn't know about dunking Oreos in milk.
Well, so like Giannis discovering things has been a fun
Mhm.
genre, essentially, of the NBA for a while now. Obviously, Giannis grew up poor in Greece. Now he's here in America. He's definitely not poor anymore.
Right.
I am stunned that, because it's, see, you get a lot of why you like Giannis in the presser, because when he talked about it, because I don't think he's just dropping him in there, because he talked about how he did that at first. He just dropped the whole cookie, and the kid was like, "What
Yeah.
are you doing? That's not how you do it." But he mentioned, he's like, guys get their first NBA check, they go buy cars, they go buy jewelry. He's like, I just went and bought Oreos, and like that's just like why Giannis is great and like really good at
And I
basketball. It's
imagine,
like that type of humble work ethic that he
well,
brings to the game.
and I imagine, like, when he said that, I imagined it being like he didn't just buy like one thing of Oreo. He bought the amount of Oreos that the same price of a car. So he bought like $30,000 worth of
Just
Oreos,
went to
was in my mind.
Costco and bought an entire bulk shipment of Oreos.
Yeah, that's what I
Um,
thought.
I hope they're double stuffed after the max contract, at least now.
Okay, hold on. Here is my hot take with
Oh boy.
Oreos.
Oh no.
Oreo thins are the best.
Justin, that's the worst take you've ever had on this podcast. Are you
No,
kidding me right now?
dude,
Are you
dude,
joking?
I'm
What is
telling
this?
you. This is my go-to snack. Giannis, if you're listening, he doesn't listen to this podcast, but someone did tell us we're in the 1% of podcasts, so maybe he does. But if my snack at night, right? You go get some yogurt, plain too, which is, I know, already some red flags, but stick with me here. You get some plain Greek yogurt.
Mm-hmm.
You put 2 scoops of chocolate protein powder into the yogurt, mix it up so now it's chocolate Greek yogurt. Take 5 or 6 Oreo thins, crumble them up into the yogurt, and eat that. And it is fire, and it's healthier than ice cream, but it's amazing.
No, I have no doubt that that tastes good. Like, I believe you 150% that that tastes
Mhm.
good. That doesn't change the fact that you are out of your mind if you think Oreo thins are the best Oreo product out there. Are you kidding me?
They
They're better than a
they
double
an
stuffed Oreo. Why are you lying to our listeners right now like this?
they announced a double stuffed thin Oreo, and I was like, "Yes, I
What does
want
that
that,"
even
because
mean? Like, so what is it? A regular Oreo then? Like, what is
no,
that?
it's still a thin cookie, but it's more because the Oreo thins have less of the cream in the middle, so it's like double the cream that the thin would have had, but still the thin cookie. And that what I'm in for that. I'm
I
in
love
because it's softer, it's crunchier, it's not as it doesn't fight when you're trying to chew it as much.
So Oreo's got all sorts of like knockoff flavors too at this point, where they have, they
Yeah.
have the birthday cake Oreos and the mint Oreos and
Mm.
the vanilla, obviously the vanilla reverse Oreos, which are really good as well. I like them
Uh-oh,
genuinely.
Oreos, yeah.
Um, my favorite thing is when Oreos had a cookies and cream flavored Oreo, and I'm like, fam, you made an Oreo flavored Oreo? I'm like, are you joking right now? Like, wait,
Yeah.
you already made it.
Isn't
It's
that just
just like,
isn't that just an Oreo? Yeah.
I'm just gonna go get a regular one at that point. But I
Mhm.
listen. I will crush a sleeve of Oreos. Oreos. That's the thing is like Giannis saying that he eats Oreos potentially every night for dessert. Like, I would know. I honestly don't think I ever would get
Whoa!
tired of Oreos. There's not really a planet
You
where I
just
think that exists.
you got me thinking about this, and it kind of fits the theme of the NBA podcast. While we're on snacks,
Uh-huh.
while my friend was in town the other weekend, we were in Target, and we happened to walk past Frosted Flakes, but because this guy sponsors literally everything, they were Shaq Frosted Flakes, and they had cinnamon basketballs in the Frosted Flakes. I was like, "Yo, that actually would be pretty damn good." And we got
Yeah.
that. I was not even putting milk in it. I was just eating it out of a cup like it was trail mix. It was so good.
I believe it 100%. Like, I mean, original Frosted Flakes are already one of the
Yeah,
better cereals, and then throwing cinnamon, like, I'm all in on pretty much anything cinnamon. So
yeah.
there's no doubt to me that was great. Shaq is the greatest endorser of all time. Like, there's no question about that, right? Like, I've never seen a human being successfully endorse as many products as Shaq does, and no one is tired of it. Like, that Shaq's brand has never like taken a nosedive or plummeted. Everyone loves that guy.
I'm looking it up now. How many things does Shaq endorse? Shaq has endorsement deals with about 50 companies. Damn.
I mean, I believe it. Like right off the so without even thinking, he endorses Papa John's now. He does like Epson printer cartridges, which is ridiculous.
Yep.
He does Gold
Icy
Bond
Hot.
powder, icy
Yeah.
hot. Um,
The General.
I forgot about the General. Wow, he does do the General. I mean, he had the Reebok shoe deal back in the day, so like a lot of those
Yep.
get retroed still occasionally. He had his own Shaq brand stuff that they sold in Walmart. I remember seeing that every single time. I mean, like that's without even blinking. And I know there's all sorts of other random companies. I mean, besides that's not even including obviously the movies, the rap albums. Like Shaq has a platinum album. Like
Mhm.
that's not easy. Like that's not an easy achievable feat. Shaq also has one of the better Notorious B.I.G. verses of all time. Fun fact on a song called "You Can't Stop the Rain" that came out in
Does he
'97.
really?
Crazy. Like he and Biggie
Huh.
were good friends. Has a great Biggie verse on that album.
I didn't even know
Are you
that.
kidding? Like, are you kidding me?
He's everywhere, man. Like we were joking about it, but he is literally everywhere. So it's got to be more than 50. Honestly, thinking about it, like I feel like 50 seems low, but
I mean, he had Shaq soda. I don't think that's a thing anymore, but I remember buying it because it was in like the Arizona iced tea size can, like the tall boy. So I bought one of
Mhm.
them back in the day. I remember doing that when I first moved to Jacksonville. That's like one of my first, like, oh man, I'm an adult. I'm gonna buy whatever I want. I bought Shaq soda. It's ridiculous. What
Yeah,
a time.
I don't know what my first adult purchase was. Like, I guess a TV. I think I bought a TV for my room at one point. That
Yeah.
might have been my first adult purchase. It was like $100, and I was like, "Wow, we are thriving out here."
Yeah. Oh, I mean, like, so I guess, I mean, when I furnished my apartment, essentially, when I moved to Jacksonville way back in like 2013, like that was probably
Mhm.
my first like adult thing.
Yeah.
Obviously, post college, full time job, and all that. I mean, my first stupid thing that I spent money on was a pair of Jordans for sure. Like, I bought a pair of Green Glow Jordan 4s. Like, yeah, it was. You always want sneakers. You never want to go crazy with it. And I logged on to StockX wasn't even a thing yet. It was like Flight Club back then. And I was
Mm.
just like, yep, there it is. Got them shipped right to my apartment. I actually still got them, Loki. I'm not gonna go get them now. They're way in the closet at this point, but I do still got them, so it's always fun.
So we will stop getting off topic, I guess, and get back to NBA. But you did mention NBA shoes, so I feel like in a way that works. But LeBron James had two fans thrown out the other night. Um, there were some tweets going on as to what the fans were saying, but everybody obviously upset with LeBron saying he's soft, that he's getting people, kicked out of games. I think it's also worth mentioning that he was fined $15,000 for an gesture the other night as well.
The
And
Sam
also,
Cassell,
yeah, and he also got a warning for using language during the media availability when he was responding to the league's discipline. So,
right?
is this like angry LeBron? Like, is this a whole new version of LeBron that we're gonna have to go with now, or
I mean,
what?
I don't know if this is a new version. I think we've seen this version of LeBron before where he's been angry. I think, of course, they're frustrated. This has not been remotely close to the season that they hoped it was for the Lakers so far. I mean, LeBron dealing with injuries too. He looks great when he's playing. And I mean, they are the 7 seed as we're recording this podcast, even with the loss to the Kings last night. Um, I
That was
mean,
crazy.
I think it's a little bit of everything. I mean, just a couple of things have spiraled out. Like, I mean, his was in response the BS that got him fined was in response to the Isaiah Stewart suspension. I mean, okay, come on, like you made the guy bleed from his face like that, and it hit him. It doesn't matter whether or not it was inadvertent. Like you still clocked him with a closed fist. Like you're just
Yeah.
that is the type of thing you're going to get a game for. Like you can't be more exempt than that. The Sam Cassell celebration, or I mean, the big ball celebration for anybody who doesn't really know about it. Um, eh, I mean, they fine everybody for that. Like that's been the one thing consistent about the NBA across the board is that everyone who does it gets fined. Like you kind of know that. Like, look, if you want to do it, I understand it. It's become kind of iconic at this point. Like it definitely has a life of its own. I think you know you're getting fined when you do that, and I think if anything,
Oh
if they
yeah.
had exempted LeBron from that fine, that's when a red flag would have gone up and go, "Yo, what's going on here?" I mean, because they just fined Fred VanVleet for the same celebration not even 2 weeks ago, I think. So,
Well,
um,
and on top of that, what's $15,000 to LeBron? Like,
of course, like it's obviously everything is situational as well, but
yeah.
that's definitely a factor. Um, but I think I mean yeah, across the board, I don't think it's angry LeBron though or anything like that. I mean, maybe we'll see it on the court, but he's definitely been. I mean, he's been playing well. It's one of the few good things is that he is definitely playing well, even when not being injured. It's just been kind of the other issues that have been going on there with the Lakers. In terms of the
Mhm.
fans getting thrown out in Indiana, which I mean, this also took away from the fact that he did the silencer for what? That was the first time forever. I don't know if he's done that since Miami. I don't know if he ever did it
Mhm.
in Cleveland. But it was good to see that back. It's a classic celebration. I mean, he again, that was awesome. He was awesome in that overtime. Like he did basically put the team on his back and beat him that game. I mean, the thing with the celebration or him getting the fans kicked out and it being soft is it's just, I mean, so the reports are out there. People are saying that they were saying to LeBron that they hoped his oldest son died in a car accident. If they
Yeah.
really yelled that at LeBron, then yeah, get him out of here. Like this is just garbage. Like you're
Yeah.
wishing death on his child at a basketball game. Like if you're especially like when you sit courtside and you have the ability to interact with the game like that in a sense where they might be able to hear what you're saying really and chanting and things like that. Like there's just kind of an assumed to me social contract of responsibility. Like you can heckle somebody, obviously, like that's part of the game. Like, go back to obviously the most infamous one is Spike Lee in New York with him being courtside at
Mhm.
all the games and him and Reggie Miller taunting back in the 90s, among other things. But that's part of it. Like heckling is part of it. Like I think, especially like LeBron's on the road in Indiana. Indiana's had plenty of meaningful matchups with LeBron as well, going back to his Miami days. But this is not a situation where, like, if yeah, you're going too far. If I don't think it's soft if you're telling a fan to get the hell out of here if they're wishing for your eldest son to die in a car accident. Like that to a point that is over the line. Like that to me is worse than cursing at him in a way. Um,
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that, and, I have a bunch of friends that are just LeBron James haters in general, so
of
when they
course.
saw this immediately, they were like, "Oh my god, LeBron's soft," and my response was like, "Well, what did they say?" Because there is a level of there is a line, right, where if it's on this side of the line to the LeBron James side, well, if they cross it, then I'm like, "Yo, man, they gotta go." If they're saying some real messed up stuff, they gotta go. Now, I also think if it had come out and they were just, yelling at him. So I think if I were courtside, I think what I would do is I would like find out the player's middle name and just call them their middle name the whole time. So it was like enough that they'd be like they enough that they know I like did some research on them and know some stuff and like be like, I'd find like their high school coach's name and I'd be like, yo, your high school coach hates you, bro. Like just like just say their names though. I wouldn't even say high school coach. I would just say their name, be like, yo, I heard he hates you. And then like it'd be one of those things where like it might just be in their brain where they're like, wait, that what? Like, you know what I
Uh,
mean? Like enough to deter them just an inch.
LeBron's middle name is Raymond, by the way. I had to look that up.
Oh, dude, I
Raymone.
I'd be calling him Ramon James the whole damn game. Good shot, Ramon. I
You
would
don't
be
think that
pulling that out.
Justin's gonna be the guy on SportsCenter. You're gonna see him just fueling LeBron. LeBron's gonna cook up like a 60-point
Oh yeah,
performance and just bark at Justin the whole time. Just be yelling at his face, cursing him
I
out,
would,
calling him like,
dude.
"Go running back to your mama" as he's hitting buckets and stuff like that.
Dude, if I called LeBron James Ramon and he hits like a three and turns and just stares me down, I would literally crumble inside. Like I would just
I
be
always
like,
dude,
ah.
I always love the basketball reference nicknames too, and there's a lot that we can
Mhm.
talk about because these aren't with LeBron's, these aren't even, like, bad or anything like that. Because
Right.
obviously you got the obvious ones. You got King James, you got LBJ, Chosen One, Braun, but then you got the Little Emperor, the Akron Hammer, and L Train. I have never heard anyone on earth call LeBron James L Train. Who has said that? I don't think LeBron has called himself L Train. Like,
See,
what is
I'd
this?
have if I found out I had front row seats, say you called me up and you're like, "Yo, Orlando Magic, they're playing the Lakers. I got us courtside. Let's go." I would have I would have note cards. Each player, I'd know all their old coaches' names. I would know all their nicknames. I'd be every time they ran past me, it'd be a new one. They'd be like, "How's this kid know so much shit about me?"
You're like
Like it would
Nardwar.
be great.
You're like the Nardwar sitting courtside at NBA, just pulling out
It'd be
random
great.
facts left and right. You
Oh,
know,
it would be
that's what
so
we
good.
try to do here on the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. Welcome everybody. My name is Kevin Rayfuse. Joining me as always, my co-host Justin Kuzart.
Oh boy. So appreciate the love and prayers.
Oh, is this our pal Ja Morant who we're going to talk
It
about?
it is. It is. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, like I guess we'll save it for after the break when we talk about our sponsors for a little bit. But he certainly, I mean, I mean, obviously with the non-contact aspect of it, that always raises red flags. But then the fact too that he
Hmm.
just went out on Insta right away and was just like put up the "pray for me" post. It was like, oh no, like this is like that means
Yeah.
he felt something. We know something. Got a late Woj bomb, saying that it's a sprain apparently. So thank God. Obviously, a sprain is not great. Potentially, he's still going to miss time. Could miss a lot of time, but
But it
a
could be a lot
large,
worse.
large difference, right? Hopefully, I mean, we don't
Hmm.
have final word yet, but
True.
a
True.
tremendous difference from any potential, an ACL tear, God forbid, or something like that. Where we'd be looking at, you're looking at least a year worth of recovery time.
Yep.
It completely at that point then changes the outlook of the season for the Grizzlies. And, we're going to talk about that a little bit later, what it means for the Grizzlies in the short term, because I do think that they're going to be going for a bit now without LeBron or without Ja Morant here. And so we'll talk about what that looks like for the
The
rest of their
the
season.
the the Memphis LeBron, if you will.
What?
The
Oh,
Memphis LeBron, John Morant.
oh yeah. I mean, true. Yeah, I mean, he essentially is, no doubt about it. Um, Never mind. I'll save it for after the break. Leave us a review on the podcast, good or bad. We will read them. If you're not an iTunes user, an Apple user, you can listen to the podcast on Spotify, Stitcher, the Google Play Store, Spreaker, Amazon Music, TuneIn Radio, anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us.
Yep, and we are on YouTube, so you can always find us there. If you feel so inclined, you can always check us out. Just search Drive and Dish NBA. We are at 26 subscribers. We are rolling right along. So if you want to be number 27, feel free to find us there and give us a subscription.
Yeah, the Rudy Gobert of subscribers, if you will. And now a word from our
Hmm.
sponsors. All right, we want to send a shout out to our friends over at Manscaped for more support here on this episode of the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. We told you guys about last week. Black Friday was going on. Happy Thanksgiving, by the way. Hope everybody had a wonderful holiday. Got to spend it with family. Now Cyber Monday is coming up, and so Manscaped is running their Cyber Monday deal. Everything on site is going to be 25% off, and you get free shipping. You can also get a discount as well. Use the code DISH20. You can get products like this here, for example, the Lawnmower 4.0. It's great, precision engineered for those sensitive areas, if you will. Ceramic head right here. You kind of take a look at that a little bit. So definitely, again, gives you a little bit of extra caution down there. You want to, be safe. Lord knows you don't need any pain down there. It also gives you the ability to turn on the 4000K LED spotlight for a more precise shave. and it has wireless charging as well. So it's always a plus. We are in 2021. Honestly, the other thing I want to talk about too, because that came in the box that I've been using. Y'all know I run a lot. That's basically my main form of working out. I go running on a daily basis. The crop preserver right here. After your run, listen, I'm not going to lie, I've got big thighs. I have the tendency to chafe when I run long distances. You put this on your legs, you put this in your sensitive areas. It keeps it, you keep stay moisturized down there. You avoid chafing. I'm not walking like a damn cowboy after every single long distance run. It really makes those afternoons a lot more comfortable. So, like we said, everything on the website is 25% off. Use the promo code DISH20. Check out that Cyber Monday sale as well and get free shipping.
And maybe take advantage and get it as a gift for somebody for Christmas, which is just around the corner, which is terrifying. So dish 20 for the promo code to support us, and we appreciate it already.
All right. So last week we talked a little bit about, or last episode, I should say, we talked a little bit about streaking teams. We're going to get into Phoenix here a little bit later. Spoiler alert, they still haven't lost yet. But we got a couple of things to talk about this episode. The first thing we do want to talk about, we talked a little bit about before the break, was Ja Morant. It looked like non contact knee injury in the Memphis game last night. Um, he ended up having to leave that game early.
Yeah.
Again, like we said on Instagram, right after the game, on Twitter, put up the pray for me. It's in God's hands now. Certainly giving everybody cause for alarm, but Woj bomb late in the night saying that it's just knee sprain. Still a lot of TBD. Like we haven't heard anything final from Ja from the organization of what exactly it looks like. Regardless, it looks like the Grizzlies now are going to be without Ja Morant for a couple of weeks. Currently sitting in the 8th spot at 9 and 10, I should say. They're tied record wise with Denver and with Minnesota, who are 9 and 10, respectively. But obviously, just a super devastating injury for a guy who was more than likely, in my eyes, in lead for the most improved player race.
Well, and I remember when I remember when he said that he came out and said he was probably going to be, you know, in the running for most improved player, and I think we looked at it and we're like, well, you're already scoring almost 20 points a game. Like, what are you gonna, how are you gonna step it up? And obviously, look at his stats now. He added new tricks to his bag. He
Yeah.
stepped it up.
No, just so I mean, obviously using the athleticism, how he finishes in the paint is just elite in terms of
Hmm.
the NBA. But yeah, basically every stat is up. I mean, his points up from 19 to 24. His effective field goal percentage up from just about 49 to 52%. His 3-point percentage was up from 30 to 35. Obviously, that's massive.
Yeah,
His overall field goal percentage up from 44 to 47. Let me just slide down here to his advanced real quick. His VORP was up from point 0.6 to point 0.9. His overall box plus minus up from negative 0.08 last year to 3.5 this year. His offensive box plus minus, the biggest reason for that, up from a 1.3 to a 5.3.
damn.
Still leaves a little bit to be desired on the defensive end, but what he does for this Memphis team, obviously the engine that makes them go. You've got Jaren Jackson locked into a long-term deal now that they signed earlier in the season. This is again just all part of this young core that they're building here. You're going to be now without him for a couple of weeks. The good thing is that the Western Conference, I think, especially towards the bottom, is just so much more mediocre than it's been in past years that I think they have the ability to hang around. I mean, Denver has a ton of injuries. We'll get into them more a little bit. Minnesota hasn't really leapt off the page so far. Obviously, the Lakers have been struggling. The Kings have been struggling. They already fired Luke Walton. The Kings have won 2 straight. Oklahoma City,
Hmm.
San Antonio, New Orleans, Houston down the line. It's not like they're, again, none of those teams are really going to just completely jump Memphis at this point. Memphis has enough talent on their roster and has enough depth. um, I don't know. Like, I think Memphis is going to hang around without Ja Morant. Obviously, if this ends up being a long-term deal where he ends up missing the rest of the season, then at that point they should be playing for a draft pick almost because they have such a talented young core. Imagine if they're able to slide, get another high lottery pick, and then add that onto the roster. Like that maybe has the potential to take Memphis to even the next level. I know that would certainly be disappointing given the expectations for this season and what they were able to do last season, but and just disappointing to see because, like we said, Ja was improving so much. Like you just love to see your young guys continue to develop like this. But I mean, I think in the short term, you got to be happy that it's just a sprain. There's a chance that he comes back this season, which allows you to potentially play more meaningful basketball. And just again, given the state of the conference, they're going to slide, but I don't think it's going to be some end of the world type slide necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the only thing that I really could find stat wise that showed, what it was like with him off the court is their point differential is point 0.5 in their favor per 100 possessions with him on the court, and then it's a minus 2.1 with him off the court. So I don't think anybody's surprised when you say a stat that says they're worse with him not playing. I think everyone would agree with that, obviously. Um, and to your point of the standings, right, the Grizzlies are in 8th. I mean, if they had, to put it in perspective, if they won 2 more, or if they had 12 wins, they'd be tied for 3rd place. Like, it's tight. It's a very tight Western Conference right now. Do I think they jump up very high? I don't think they do because Ja's there. But like you were saying, I don't necessarily see too many teams behind them, you know, passing them other than maybe, the Nuggets might put something together or at least kind of turn around and figure something out. Obviously, injuries there. And maybe the Kings, I mean, the Kings, maybe I'm just high on them because they had a pretty nice overtime, triple overtime win, I should say, over the Lakers, which was crazy. So, um, maybe there's something to it. Maybe those two go, but if Ja comes back and there's enough time in the season, I could see Ja being the spark to give him that push to either make a play-in tournament or make it into the playoffs.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. He could definitely be the late spark. I mean, if he's fully healthy at the end of the season, the
Yeah.
Grizzlies are going to be a team that
Well,
nobody necessarily, especially in a play-in, wants to play again. Um,
and to that, I would say if he comes back, he better be 100%. Don't put him.
yes,
Why rush him back? You know what I
no, they
mean?
should
Why?
100% be erring on the side of caution right now. Like Ja Morant's 22 years old. Ideally, his
Yeah,
best basketball is plenty of years in front of him. This is not a yeah, this is a situation where if he's not 100%, then you should be not rushing him back so that he potentially
agreed.
then messes up the next season. Like, and again, I do think there's value if they don't make the playoffs. It's not really the end of the world if they had a lottery pick. Like, I again, disappointing for sure, but the name of the game right now for Memphis is to get as much talent as possible. It's a lot easier to do that with a lottery pick than it is with like a mid-20s pick necessarily.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And yeah, I mean, you don't want like a situation like KD where he came back during the playoffs and got himself really hurt, even though he was obviously hurt beforehand, but you don't want that. And if that were to happen, then you potentially sabotage this season and next season. And yeah, so
It's so
we
funny
don't we
because
don't need
you
that.
mentioned KD as the example, and I thought you were talking about. I'm always going back to the foot injury in Oklahoma City, where he ended up missing an entire
Yeah,
season when he came back. You're talking about the Golden
same.
State injury, obviously, that probably everyone is thinking of in the NBA Finals with the Achilles. It's just
Yeah.
crazy. It's crazy that's happened with KD twice. Um, it's
Well,
just
because I imagine, like from a KD mindset, from a player mindset, you just want to get back out there. And for Golden State, like
oh,
you're trying to win
KD
it
it was
all. Like you got to
meaningful.
get out there.
Yeah, it's the finals.
Exactly. That's what I
Like,
mean. So
and he's just
so
trying to play meaningful basketball. I can completely understand that. I don't think
I agree.
anybody that was knocking him for that is silly. It's just unfortunate that I think there was a lot of pressure from
To come
Golden
back.
State, and I don't think anyone will ever admit it, but I think they were leaning on him hard to come back when he probably wasn't remotely 100%. I mean, clearly wasn't
Yeah.
remotely 100%. And then in reality, I mean, it just made it worse. They were also nearing, I think, the end of his tenure there too. So I think there was a little bit of there was always that
Tension.
weirdness, and I think a lot of that was cultivated in organization, and not from Steph and not from
Hmm.
Draymond. I think it was from the top of the ladder. Like I always go back to that parade when what's his name, Lacob mentioned that he's like, oh well, yeah, KD, he wasn't homegrown like Steph and Clay, and it's like, yo, what are you doing, guy? Like this guy, Kevin
Right.
Durant came in and just solidified you winning every title for the foreseeable future, more or less. It's just it's a weird stance to take, but we don't got to rehash the past. All right, who's balling, who's falling? Our NBA version of the stock market. We always like to start with the good before the bad. And so for balling for me this week, we're going to stick with Phoenix now up to 15 straight. They were at 13 straight last episode. Just keep on rolling. Pretty close to closing the month of November here. with having won every single game. Both of these, they're on a road trip right now too, so a little bit more impressive there. Their last two wins, 120 to 115 over Cleveland, and then 118 to 97 over New York. Devin Booker over 30 points in both of those games, 35 against Cleveland, 32 against New York. They are playing tonight as of recording this, so
Hmm.
this streak is on the line against Brooklyn. I said this would likely where it would get tough just off the back to back. So we're going to see what happens with that. If not, they'll be back home in the desert against Golden State, who also has maintained a one-game lead over them this entire time. Still has only lost twice on the year. Golden State will be playing, or Phoenix will be playing Golden State in Phoenix on Tuesday. Those if Phoenix wins both of those games, not only will they have won 17 in a row, but then they will then successfully closed out a month of November with winning every single game. I do think the streak ends either tonight or against Golden State. I just think it's a really tough slate. I think they're going to get tripped up at one of those times. But again, they're cooking. They look like in a like we said. I think the theme so far has just been really how mediocre the West has been. They're in a situation now too because of injuries where them and Golden State can really start to put some separation here between them and the. I mean, the only other team that to me really is in the same ballpark is Utah, where those three squads can start to put some separation between them and the rest of the conference. But I mean, again, the Phoenix hasn't lost since October 27th when they were 1-3 on the season. They're 16-3 right now. You always wonder with teams again who lose in the finals, what's the finals hangover looks like. You got to be really enthused if you're Phoenix so far.
Yeah, I also would say, um, kind of quietly, the Hawks are on a 7-game win streak as well.
Mhm.
And then you got the Bucks and the Warriors with a 6-game win streak. So a lot of weird win streaks going on right now. But yeah, I mean, from a Western Conference standpoint, Warriors and Suns and Jazz, just I guess in their aspect, try to keep going. I know Gobert has made some comments about the Jazz and how he feels like they're kind of treading water in a way, just kind of not getting better, and just feels like they're um, stuck. Is kind of at least from what the tweets and the comments that I was reading the other day were about. But from a Suns and Warriors perspective, it's like just put as much distance between everybody as you can and keep grinding it out.
There is something to be said about. I mean, the Jazz are 12-7 right now. The Suns and Warriors have less than 7 losses combined. Golden State's got two. Phoenix has three. Uh,
Hmm.
I, I do think I think Utah is a step above the Dallas, the Clippers, the Portlands, the Lakers right now, the Memphises of the world. Um, but I do feel like I understand or I see where Rudy is coming from in the sense that it does feel like there is a gap between Utah. While Utah
Yeah.
is a gap on the rest of the conference, it does feel like right now there's a pretty substantial gap between Golden State and Phoenix and then Utah. And for a team that's, really, I mean, for Utah, it's all about the playoffs. Like Utah's had plenty of regular season success. Word to them being the number one seed last year, but it's about getting past that second round of the playoffs, trying to make a run for the conference finals, making a
Yeah.
run at the finals. I think they also recognize how wide open this conference is in a time where, I mean, when's the last time ever the Western Conference was this wide open? Though it certainly doesn't feel like it's nearly as wide open because it feels like there are two teams who are way better than everybody. Where in the East, I
Yeah.
think the East there are tiers of it, but I mean the East from 1 to 10 is pretty solid. I think even the 10 seed is going to give anybody a run.
Yeah, and it's way closer, obviously. Like, the Nets who are in first have 14 wins, but then you look at the Sixers who are Celtics and Sixers, Celtics, Sixers, and Knicks. Sorry, I don't want to exclude anybody who are, in 10th, ninth, and 8th respectively with 10 wins. Like it's
Yeah.
a very, very it's 4 games and you could be
Well,
out. So
and even then, 11, 12, and 13 right now are
yeah,
Cleveland, Toronto, and Indiana, respectively. They all have 9 wins.
one. Yeah.
The 11 seed in the West is Sacramento. Sacramento has 8 wins. Like they would be higher than all the teams that are those three teams in the East would be higher than any other team in the Western Conference right now. And arguably would be fighting for an eighth spot right now. I mean, Memphis, Denver, and Minnesota are all sitting at 9 and 10. Um,
Which
Cleveland
which
is 9
which
and
I don't
10.
think we've I don't think we've been able to say that about the Western Conference. I feel like most times this kind of conversation comes up. We're saying like, man, the 10th seed in the West would be a third seed in the
Yeah.
East. It's usually how that
It's
conversation
always
goes.
the
So it's flipped.
opposite. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
always the opposite where it's like every one of these teams in the Eastern Conference, I mean, even some of them being a little more unproven, like in terms of Washington, in terms of Charlotte, for example.
Yeah.
Regardless, like those are good squads that are going to hang around all year. Like I don't think there's a situation where they're falling out of play in game contention. I think
Yeah.
the only team that could have been, kind of that could have shaken it up a little bit right now in the East at least is Cleveland. And unfortunately, just with Cleveland, they're dealing with the
Yeah.
Colin Sexton injury now. They've lost five straight. And so I think that that's kind of put a damper on the great early start for them.
Yeah.
And Mobley's been missing time as well. They're getting Evan Mobley back, so obviously that's a huge boost for that young squad. But I mean, Sexton loss is huge for the rest of their year.
Yeah. So my ballin is actually going to go out to De'Aaron Fox, who put up 34, 6, and 8 in 53 minutes to beat the Lakers in a 3 overtime win, which is phenomenal. Craziness. It was a wild game, and I think a win the Kings really needed because a lot of negativity around them with Walton and all that going away. So
But
it gives them a 2 game win streak, but they seem to be clicking a little bit.
oh, it's like the Alvin Gentry era starts off with just an awful loss to the Sixers, sans Joel Embiid and Tobias Harris. It's like what an
Hmm.
awful way to start an interim coaching tenure, and then to come out here and get two straight. Again, anytime you get a triple overtime win, you're just in a marathon like that. That does wonders for your
Yeah,
locker room. This is a core with expectations. These are young guys who you want to look to get to play some competitive basketball, and the season is still early. They're a game and a half out of 10 right now. Like there's still plenty of basketball left to play here. That was kind of the only good thing I thought about the Luke Walton firing. I'm not suggesting Luke Walton was a good coach, but I think if you're going to make a change like that, it's good to do it early in the season than wait
yeah.
and have him ride out the rest of the year. So I think to that perspective, it's a
Well,
good move by the Kings, and we'll see what they can do.
and I would say in a way, it's kind of nice because then they can decide what they want to do with Alvin Gentry too. Like you're going to get almost an entire season of Alvin Gentry now,
Mhm.
and by the end of the season, you should have an idea of whether or not you think he should be the head coach of the team going forward. I'm sure fans will have differing opinions, but at least from the front office, if they set parameters with him saying, we want you to do this, we want to make the playoffs, we want to, whatever it is, see where he can do.
Yeah, absolutely. Fallen for me this week is PJ Dozier. Just more injuries for Denver. PJ's got an
Yeah.
ACL tear, so he's going to miss the rest of the year. This on top of obviously we talked about Michael Porter last week dealing with the nerve issue in his back. We don't know what's going to happen with him, but there's a chance he doesn't
Yeah.
play the rest of the season. Jamal Murray's still recovering. Nikola Jokic is dealing with a wrist injury. Bones Highland is dealing with an ankle injury. It's just an awful, awful nightmarish start to the season for Denver. You already knew it was going to be a little more difficult just once Jamal Murray got hurt last year, but you were hoping, you stay in contention, you get healthy, you get him back. You could maybe make a run. Like Denver's the one that you could definitely
Yeah.
talk me into the top of the Western Conference very, very fast if everybody's healthy. Instead, you're just dealing with all these injuries right now. For PJ Dozier, it's unfortunate because I mean this is an undrafted guy. He's on two ways and minimum salaries, and here he is making a name for himself in this Denver rotation, solidifying minutes, and now dealing with the ACL tear, and it's going to miss the rest of the year. So you feel bad for him there in that perspective as well. But just an absolute nightmare start to the season for Denver.
Yeah, it sucks. It's one of those ones where you thought, going into the season, if Murray was coming back at some point, like it was time to make a real legit run at it, and it feels like we're probably not going to get that this year. So my fallen is going to go for Anthony Edwards and Gabe Vincent because Edwards absolutely murdered him with that dunk, and then it got called as a charge. And so it's fallen for the NBA for calling that a charge because I don't care, man. When you dunk on someone that hard, you got to give them the points. Like, dear Lord, that was crazy.
Yeah, oh, 100%. I mean, it's the best it reminds me of the Ja Morant dunk from last year when he tried to go
Mhm.
over Kevin Love, where it's just like, it's gonna go down as, like, one of the better non-dunk, attempts that in the NBA history, as crazy as that
Yeah,
sounds, like, which sounds ridiculous that we're celebrating a non-dunk, but it's just, yeah, man, Edwards almost I mean, he had dunk of the year last year, and
yeah.
definitely was putting himself in that candidate early, right again. I mean, trying to catch a body on Gabe Vincent, good lord. Um that was a good win for the Timberwolves too. I mean, that was
Yeah.
what do you think of Timberwolves fans booing Jimmy Butler?
I mean, I'm not surprised
I'm not surprised either, but I don't know if I
because
get
it
it necessarily. Like, do we
well,
blame the
and
organization or do we blame Jimmy Butler?
I mean, you blame the organization, but the organization is your home. You're stuck with the organization, you know? Like, it's like when your best friend's obviously wrong and you're getting into a fight, you still have to fight, you know? Like, you still got to throw hands. It's like you
Like,
gotta
I
boo
know
him. You have to.
it was a lot less acrimonious when Jimmy Butler left Philly than when he left Minnesota. Like, obviously a
Mhm.
lot less dramatic. Um, I don't know, like, I to me, like, I don't know because Philly fans have booed Jimmy Butler a little bit, and I don't really get why. Like, I to me, Jimmy Butler, if anything, I want him back. If anything, I'm more upset that it's like, "Yo, my ex moved on and is doing great right now. Like, I want my
Yeah.
ex back. Like, I wanna
But
be
that's,
here and
but that's,
prospering."
but that's why
Should
you boo
Minnesota not
them.
feel that same way? Like, Minnesota should to me, like, that's when they made the playoffs. That's the best season they've had recently since Kevin
No,
Garnett. Like, why would we let
because,
I don't know. Like, I get it, but I also don't think Minnesota fans
yeah.
should necessarily hate Jimmy Butler. And Timberwolves fans, tell me if I'm wrong, because I do understand that it was a pretty ugly breakup, but, like, I blame a lot of that on the organization too.
I agree, but it felt very and this might be a bad example, but it felt very TO-esque when he left the Eagles, where it was just kind of like it didn't feel good. You left, you kind of took a few jabs as you were going, you know, and the
Yeah.
things that you've said after just kind of dumping on the organization in a way,
I
and he
wonder if
was
it
doing it
cools
while
off.
he was there, so
I wonder if
it
it cools
might.
off that way because I think a lot of Eagles fans aren't mad at Terrell. Like, I, as an Eagles fan, I'm not mad at T.O. at all. I'm upset.
Yeah.
To me, it's a what if. That's why I'm disappointed because Terrell Owens went out, had 14 catches and like 100 and some yards at the
Yeah.
Super Bowl on literally a broken leg. They were extremely close to beating the Patriots, but unfortunately ended up losing that game. I mean, he would have been an all-time Philly athlete. Like, to me, I'm just sad that destiny was never fulfilled. Like, obviously, I have a ton of love for Donovan McNabb as well. But I guess that's
They
kind of
don't
how
love each other though.
no, but that's fine. Is that how you kind of feel if you're Minnesota, where it's like you have a ton of love for Carl Anthony Towns? Like, he's your guy. You appreciate what he's brought to the organization, but eventually, like, Jimmy Butler is rehabbed a little bit as well, where it's like, yo, Jimmy was great the year that he was there in Minnesota, and everybody loved him.
Yeah. I think because I don't know, the whole like going I don't maybe it cools off down the line, but at that point then why care, you know, because at that point he's been gone for so long and I get it, you look back at that time, but you start making the playoffs and with the team you have now, then he's old news and you don't care, you know?
Well, right. I mean, success is the best revenge. Ideally, that's what you're
Right.
hoping is that with Towns and Anthony Edwards and D'Angelo Russell, that you're
Mhm.
able to get into the playoffs and play meaningful basketball. Because we know Jimmy Butler has since he's left. He played it in Philly for that
Yeah.
half a year. He played it in Miami, going to the finals and making the playoffs again last year. So, well, and of course, Miami hanging around right now as well. Um, all right. So, forgive me. You did your fallen this week.
Yep, that was falling. That was Edwards
Oh, with Anthony
because
Edwards,
of
right,
the dunk.
with the dunk getting
Mhm.
called off. Okay, cool. My bad. Just because it was so awesome that I almost weirdly like flashed back to it being balling. Potentially balling again. We have Zion Williamson getting the Woj bomb this week. That Woj is, that Zion, I should say, is cleared for contact. He's going to be playing 4-on-4 essentially. Still nothing 100%. Like, yeah, we're not suggesting that he is going to come back anytime soon. Um, he has a little bit of rehab to go, but I mean, this is the first time that we've seen him back. We've seen him ready to go. Obviously, for the Pelicans, you have to be thrilled. You're in a situation where you've lost. I mean, the Pelicans are really far back in the standings at this point. Like, I don't really think they can make up enough ground, even with the West being pretty bad. I mean, New Orleans is sitting at 5-16 right now. They have won 2 straight as of recording this episode, but it sure feels like a lot of the season has already passed them. And we're in a situation on top of that where, um, Zion, it's not like Zion is coming back tomorrow. I guess that's my point. Like, you're not instantly getting that boost into the lineup. But it is, you're great to see him cleared for full basketball activities as he nurses this foot fracture. I guess, what do you like if you're a Pelicans fan and if you're the organization, what are you happy with, I guess, at this point? Like, do we just want to see Zion play the rest of the year healthy and chalk that up as a W at this point? Just that he's able to bounce back from this injury and that he's in shape and playing basketball?
I think I think there's a little bit of that, and I also wonder if there's an angle of the team trying to manage Zion's injury correctly and that upsetting Zion because Zion wants to get on the court, Because we already had the first season where we heard he was unhappy with the way that they were treating him and trying to make sure he was healthy, and he just wanted to get out there. He didn't want the minutes restriction and all that stuff. And so I worry if something like that's going on again, where it's like the player wants to get out there, and the player always wants to get out there. So I get it, but the team doesn't want him out there because he's young, and this is another injury, and everything about this injury in general has just been a little confusing. Because I go back to David Griffin saying that he was going to be good to start the season when they announced that he needed his footwork done. So it was like,
Mhm.
I mean, we're in the season, man. Like we're almost at Christmas now. So what's going on here, So part of that makes me wonder is I guess what you want is you want Zion and the team on the same page. And whether that means Zion's out there playing a lot or not, I guess that doesn't necessarily matter. You just want to make sure he's on good terms with that. I was reading something about his contract. He could do an extension next summer. And where was it? He has to play. He would need to start 41 games or play 2,000 minutes next season to qualify. So he knows that. He's looking at that stuff. And I mean, if he does that, he has a chance to get a qualifying offer at 17.6 million for the 2023 the 23-24 season. So, that's got to be on his mind too. So, I think at the end of the day, if you're a Pelicans fan, whenever Zion comes back, you just want it to be a everybody's on the same page thing.
Yeah. No, I completely agree there because I think that's what a lot of it has been, or where the issue has been, is that it just feels like no one like there's mutual frustration with each other. That Zion is frustrated with the organization, and the organization is frustrated with Zion. Like
Yeah.
always, I think the answer is probably somewhere in the middle. Like, I think Zion's weight
Mhm.
issues are 100% on him, and I think when Zion's making the money he should make, like, get him around personal chefs, get him around people who can just make him eat healthier. Like, as
Well,
crazy as that sounds, like,
and
it's at a point where he
and
has missed too much time. Like, he played 24 games his first year. He
yeah.
got 61 in last year, but like, again, that's a pretty significant, that's basically a quarter of the season he
Well,
missed.
and I would say the Pelicans probably counter argument is we've seen their announcements that they've changed personnel, they've hired, you know, nutritionists and stuff like that to do that. You got the head coach calling out officiating and showing videos of how Zion's just taking beatings more than normal players are and trying to get the NBA to do something about it. So like from the Pelican side, they should make sure Zion knows that they're doing that. Like, look, bro, like we're going out of our way to fight for you. We're trying to get you an easier life. We're trying to make this work for you. We're trying to help you with the weight if that's the angle. So, that's like you said, there's something in the middle where I think both sides think they're doing a lot for the other and maybe frustrated with each other. Again, we haven't had Zion come out and outright say he was. It's always been a family member or a report or a leak. It's never him. So I think that's all you're hoping for is that everybody's on the same page and everybody's happy, whenever he does come back, and then obviously not getting re-injured.
Yeah, it's good news. Like, it's been a rough season for the
Yeah.
Pelicans. It hasn't remotely been even what you thought it would be, obviously, with not having Zion, with Brandon Ingram missing a significant amount of time,
Yeah.
even little injuries. Like, Devontae Graham has missed time, for example. He's back now, but in a situation where they're trying to get acclimated with Willie Green, he's trying to get his feet wet as well as a rookie head coach. Like, there are just a lot of things where you want to try to all get on the same page, and they need to sooner than later because the Pelicans are on the clock with Zion. Like they still have plenty of time. I'm not in a situation, and I'm not rooting for Zion to just leave New Orleans. I'm not one of these people who's trying to push him to a big market, but I think there's a lot of just unfinished business there, and that's what I think you like. That to me is you just want to see them get on the same page. Like I think that's more important than anything else. But if Zion can come
Hmm.
back and play the rest of the season and finishes strong and looks every because that's the thing is like it's a shame because when he's on the court, he's awesome. Like he's genuinely been
Yeah.
every bit as good as hyped when he's played NBA basketball. I want to get back to talking about him on the floor. Like it just feels like it's a
Yeah.
situation where we're talking about everything except him playing actual basketball. Um,
Yep.
but I mean, there's a situation where he's back, kind of mid-December. It's looking like. Obviously, you hope he can come back even sooner, but um, I mean, he could be back in a couple of weeks. If he's back in time for Christmas, it's pretty much best case scenario if you can get him on the floor. Again, they have some climbing to do if they're going to. And
Yeah.
again, uh, Denver dealing with injuries, and now Memphis dealing potentially with the Ja Morant injury. There's a situation where they can climb, but they have a lot to climb if they're going to make a playoff push. Obviously, that would be best case scenario. If Pelicans are able to get into the playoffs, then we all of a sudden you turn this season around real quick. I think we go from this being a disaster to this being a not a best case scenario, but like borderline, pretty close if Zion's healthy and they end up climbing the mountain and get back into the playoffs.
Yeah, of course. I think if he comes back, you still make the push. You see where it goes, but I think all at the end of the day is I'm more concerned about making sure they're all happy with each other. I don't care if that means you gotta do whatever you gotta do. Just make sure everybody's on the same page and happy and not trying to leave the team.
Well, it's generational talent. Like Zion just
Hmm.
has this ability to be that type of guy, like and be a superstar. They've had them, and they've had some success. Like they had success with Anthony Davis. They made the playoffs. They probably never got as far as they wanted to. Like I think a lot of Pelicans fans are definitely unhappy with the way Anthony Davis's tenure, especially how it ended. But I think
Sure.
there are probably plenty of people who feel like a lot was left on the table to a lesser extent with Chris Paul. I think when Chris Paul was there, I mean, I think they got to the conference finals one year. No, um,
I think
I,
so. Yeah.
actually I want to look that up. I'm curious right now. I'm going to look that up. Um, I know they at least got to the second round because they were giving Kobe teams hell. Um, those teams that won the finals and were going to the finals. The Lakers got to, or the Hornets, excuse me. No, okay, they got to the second
2004.
round. 2007, they
Yeah.
got to the second round. They won 56 games that year. But I mean, this is a franchise who the most they've won since 2010 in terms of wins in a season is 48. A couple of years ago with Anthony Davis, where they got to the second round, that's the most success they've ever had with him. This is an organization that is definitely thirsty for it. And we hope that they can get it. We talked about the coaching instability. If they're able to all get back and get healthy, I think they can start beating some of these Western Conference teams. And that's just what you want to see. You want to see them end the season on a high note because Lord knows the first quarter of it's been an absolute disaster. I think there's not going to be too many people who argue with that. Thank you,
Hmm.
everybody, for listening to this episode of the Drive and Dish NBA podcast. We appreciate you guys as always. Leave us a review on iTunes, good or bad. We'll read them on the podcast. If you're not an Apple user, Stitcher, Google Play Store, Spreaker, TuneIn, Spotify, Amazon Music, anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find us.
Yep, and be sure to find us on YouTube if you want to watch the video version. Just find us Drive and Dish NBA on YouTube, and obviously, if you want to support, go head over to Manscaped and use the promo code Dish20. It shows them that you learned about them through us, and obviously, you can get the product, and we get a little bit of a love that way.